All right, so let's move on to the movie that you picked
Black
for us,
Bear, which
Black
just
Bear.
I saw a preview for the boy showed me a preview for it a month or so ago, starring Aubrey Plaza. It just came out. It literally just came out like 2 days ago, and we'll probably spoil it. So if you're
Yes,
planning on seeing
spoilers.
it and don't want to be spoiled, I mean, normally we're talking about Marilyn Monroe films, and they're like 50 years old, and it's like 60 years old, and it's like, you know what? I mean, you had your chance, but in this case, this actually just came out.
Yeah, this just came out, so spoilers, be aware. Spoilers, truthfully, spoilers. Also, just to be clear, there is another. I think it's a foreign film, and it might have multiple names that came out last year. This is not that.
Yes.
um,
Did you want to take this one?
Yeah, I'll take this one. So this one opens on a woman on a dock at a lake, I guess. There's a lot of fog. She goes inside, she opens up a book, and then we see the title card Black Bear against some notepad paper. And we get I think just right after that, or maybe after like another scene, we get a part one, and I forget what the subtitle is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a director played by Aubrey Plaza who makes films, and apparently they're indie small films, and she later describes them as like films no one sees and everybody hates, which is exactly the kind of movies we would watch. um,
Yes.
uh, she's gone to this like this cabin. It's like a, I don't know,
It's
it's
huge.
huge
I
cabin
guess
on
it's
a lake.
technically a cabin, but yes, it's
Yeah,
huge.
to I guess it's like a creative retreat, and this couple, this musician and this woman seem to sort of, I guess they run it. It's a little loose, it's creative friends, people, who knows, creative community. And quickly things descend into really uncomfortable discussions about feminism and gender roles and creativity and all of that. And there's the woman who is there with her husband, not husband, um, is pregnant, and the director is interested in the male lead, Christopher Abbott, who's in things and I like him. And then chaos ensues, and oh no, we're driving a car and we almost hit a bear, except cut to part two. And now we're watching people film a version of what we just watched. Like, it's now a movie set, and it's postmodern, I think maybe is what we're calling this. You said that for the other review, so I'm stealing it for this one. And we're watching them make a version of what we just watched, except that Aubrey Plaza is now the wife and not the director.
Yes.
And Christopher Abbott is now the director of of the director on set, and somebody else is playing the Christopher Abbott character. And except that it's all more or less what we just watched before, except as the crew, like we're doing the same thing as the crew, except that it's also happening in the few scenes that they're filming, and that's it. Then there's that part two, which is, again, it plays out the same way, and then that's it. We get another bookend where it's Aubrey Plaza again on the dock, and she goes in and she starts to write in her notebook. That was my best attempt at it. I think I did okay.
That was fine. That was fine.
It was tough.
Um,
I
yeah.
So I had a dumb moment right after this. I have critiques of this film that I think are valid. I had a dumb moment where it was like I was having trouble figuring something out, and then I was like, oh, I'm probably missing something because it's like female-led film, and you've called out that I maybe miss something sometimes when this happens. And I was like, okay, I missed something obvious about the woman being pregnant, about how this is really about, it's about creativity in general, but also maybe a little specific to women, and
Yes.
how women interact in the creative space and what that means. And so I was like,
Yes.
okay, so that helped me a little bit after I was being dumb. But at the same time, so
To be entirely fair, this movie is written and directed by a man. But although it seems like one of the producers is his wife, who or um partner. No, they are
yeah,
married. Um, so maybe she had a substantial hand in it.
yeah, I don't
Who knows?
recognize.
But
Who
she does
knows?
not have a writing credit. He has the writing credit.
Mm. Interesting. Yeah, and
Because at the end it said for Sophie,
for Sophie, right?
and that's who it is. That's her name. Let's make her more than just the wife. Sophia Takal, um, who her husband. Let's put it on him. Wrote and directed this film.
Excellent.
He is Sofia Takal's husband.
There we go. I found like I enjoyed this while I was watching it, except that I didn't quite enjoy the first half. Like I enjoyed the first half with the caveat of like, okay, like my big critique, I'll get it out of the way, is that like we go from like 0 to like 60 as if we were in like some sports car, but and that can work for an action movie. Like plenty of action movies do that and it works fine. Whereas like this is barely narrative. I mean, it's almost experimental in that it's two different pieces, you know. It's not quite experimental, but it's just two different pieces. It's like Run Lola Run or whatever.
Yeah, it's non-traditional.
Non-traditional. And so you can't really go from 0 to 60 in a sports car with like a talky drama.
Yeah, and see, I completely understand your criticism. I loved it. I loved going from 0 to 60 of like, oh, that got bad real fast. Like, because okay, let's be a little specific. So there's an uncomfortable dinner conversation where basically they're not married, but she is pregnant with his child, as well as her child. And just everything they say, these two that have this pre-existing relationship contradicts each other. And then Aubrey Plaza is like her character. I forget her name in the first. Maybe it is Allison. I can't remember. Her character basically, we're never sure if anything she ever says is true, and she's just saying, and it feels like she's just saying things to cause more conflict, and then apologizing, and then saying something terrible again, and. They move from this dinner to the living room or an indoor area where they continue to have this fight, and it just kind of blows out of proportion. And then, you know, with people just yelling at each other, which is, I think, really where it lost you, because you were like, how did it get so wrong so fast? But to me, I feel like that's how arguments can be. Like suddenly you're like, why are we yelling at each other? Your problem is that they don't really know each other, that this is just, you know, this woman who doesn't know this couple. But to me, it kind of felt truer than it did for you, and that's just what it is.
So okay, so you're partially right, partially wrong. I'm going to stay my piece. You're right in that like they don't really know each other and it blows up fast, but that happens. People do this. This is not like unbelievable to me. Like I couldn't believe this happening. The problem to me is like we don't really like I couldn't really tell you much about these characters. Like sure, I can tell you about the situations they're in and like she's a director of these kinds of films and that's what this whole situation is about. But like I don't know anything else about her. She literally lies about her mother and stuff like that. So it's like,
or not. At least one. She says two different things, so one of them has to be a lie.
Yeah, well, or both. One or both could be lies.
True.
So it's that point where it's like I don't really know. The issue is, again, like the Wolf House, I didn't really feel emotionally connected to anything. So it was interesting, and I got through it because like I thought the writing was really good, the dialogue was really good, the acting was really good, the cinematography was really good, the situation and the way they react to each other is really good. But the characters, weirdly to me, like I'm watching it and like I don't really care about any of these people. Like I care about the situation and the ideas. Like the ideas, once I got past my dumb moment, are really interesting and really neat. And like I really liked all that. But I can believe, you know, what you said, like it's a little weird that people are arguing this much right after meeting each other. They seem rational and like sensible enough not to do that in terms of like how their dialogue is and how they're discussing, but whatever, people are like that. To me, it's more like, who are these people? Like, why do I care? What am I doing here? You know?
And I get that. But for me, I mean, I'm the character person between the two of us. Like I have trouble with, you know, I love Toshiro Mifune. I have trouble with Akira Kurosawa because sometimes I'm like, oh, you didn't create characters, you just hired character actors. Like, right. Yeah. And they create, you know, just by virtue of having such unique looks and kind of mannerisms that they create a character.
Yeah.
But this movie to me is so much about, this movie to me feels like a personal essay.
Yeah.
And it feels like a creative personal essay. I was even thinking earlier of Almodovar's personal one that you liked a little more than me.
Oh, that just came out?
Pain and Glory.
Yeah. I
You
mean, it's
know,
literally framed. This movie is literally framed like a personal essay almost because of the Notebook.
Yeah, and so for me, yes, it's a little more intellectual than visceral, as we keep saying. So we're gonna have to use different words soon. But you know, there's that part where Aubrey Plaza's character talks about wishing she were a slave, which is it's a vile thought in concept and just like, you know.
Right.
But what she was really talking about was feeling like you have no direction in life. And she says it, like, you don't have any direction, you don't know what you're doing, you don't know why you're doing it.
Yeah.
And so in that way, the characters not being specific kind of worked for me in giving that sense of disorientation and like, you know, it's almost like we're trying to nail down who these people are and you can't. And that goes, you know, part of my problem with biopics is that I think human beings are intensely complex. And so something about taking someone who really lived and simplifying them is bothersome to me, whereas inventing a person isn't.
Right.
And so in this sense, it's almost like it's showing you just, you know, you can't really nail people down. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. I don't know, but that's what it kind of gave me.
So I basically agree. Like, I liked this movie. The first half had some trouble for me, and the second half more or less made the movie really work for me, with the caveat that I still didn't, the characters kind of, I think that's my main issue, is we go from 0 to 60 really fast without the characters really being on that 0 to 60 track. But I have a thought. It just came to me, so bear with me. So you know
Black
how you
bear with me.
Black bear with me. So many jokes in there. So you talk about sometimes with like sci-fi movies, I think, or fantasy movies, like there's these interesting ideas, but like everything else just gets thrown out for the sake of like ideas. And how like Red Letter Media, I think, has done this, where they like they like Prometheus because of the ideas, but then they really harshly critique like a rom-com or something, right?
Right.
I mean, we don't know. We just
this is a criticism I've leveled at Red Letter and at other people. I don't think they're and at the world in general.
Yes, right. And so because like sci-fi is like more a male genre and rom-com is more a female genre, roughly in terms of traditional ideas. Right. So there's that issue, right? And weirdly, I want to turn this back on you and say, like, are you sure this isn't something that you really like the ideas for? So you're kind of like making it work in all these other ways? Like,
possibly. And one of the things you leveled against,
not as like a big critique of who you are.
One
just
of the
like
things you leveled against this movie is it's really hard to know what we just saw.
Yeah.
And I read the Wikipedia, which explained, like, the Wikipedia breakdown is like the Aubrey Plaza character has this experience, and then the second part is her turning it into a movie, which is not necessarily how we interpreted it. So if the movie wants you to come from it with a strict interpretation
there you go.
of the two pieces and how they relate, there's not enough there. Like,
right.
Because we kind of interpreted it as actually two different stories that she had written, like her imagining two different stories, whereas Wikipedia is saying the first one is her having this experience and the second is her depicting it.
Right.
I don't know if that works for me.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
And the movie doesn't, and that's where even kind of we were talking about, like, what if there were a third piece that, and this makes me think of another movie we saw that I kind of don't want to name because it would really spoil it, and I don't want to spoil it, but there is a comedy out there that kind of does something where you start with a situation just straight on, then it turns out it's being filmed, and you kind of see how it's filmed and what's going on, and then there is a third piece where you kind of see where they take it even back another step. And there's something about, I can tell you later which one, you probably already know.
Right.
There's something about threes, because like when you have two things, I think it's like you need three pieces of evidence. Although I think, I've been on a jury, and it's like, I forget how it works, but it's like you can have X amount of circumstantial evidence,
right,
or like then there's just like proof. And those are different things. Circumstantial evidence is like he's standing near the gun, right?
Right.
But that doesn't necessarily. So you need multiple things like that in order to prove something. Or you can have something that's like he is standing there holding the gun at someone, and that
Right.
is like proof. And this is what it feels like we have these two pieces of evidence, but there's something about having a third part that
I'm not sure I can convict based on these two pieces of evidence we have here in this film. The other thing is, I think this movie sits in a weird place between non-narrative and narrative, because I think it needs a third piece too. And a part of that is like traditional story structure. Often when you get a three-piece, like they're like Run Lola Run, like you get things like that. It really works.
You think about Moonlight, where like without that third act, it would be. I mean, but some people do 4 acts and 5 acts and so on, but we usually think of things as beginning, middle, end, 3 pieces.
And when you break it into pieces, it doesn't necessarily completely fit into that, because sometimes you're if we're talking traditional story structure, sometimes like your first piece of your 3-piece movie that's broken up that way doesn't end at the end of the first act. Like it's not. Whereas this, it sits in that weird place where it's like, I almost wish it was less narrative or more narrative, and it's not like a huge detriment, but just like
It also made me think, about that. I'm not going to be able to find it. Symbiosis.
Taxioplasm symbio something.
Let me see if that's enough to, because, and I don't know if I'm supposed to be thinking of that or not. Of course, now my internet doesn't want to help me find it.
Right.
Did I mean to look up symbiosis pistachio? Anyway, I can't remember what it's called. It's something long. I'll see if I can find it when you get to start talking. But it's a guy shooting something and someone shooting him shooting something. And then I think there's even a third crew shooting that crew.
I didn't watch this. I wonder if this is still available. I should watch this.
Yeah, it was Criterion Collection. It's on the Criterion Collection. But even there, it's like they wanted to have those 3 steps of it,
Yeah. I didn't know that's how the idea was, it that this woman had this experience and then like went and filmed it essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I don't believe that. If that's what it's supposed to be, then it just completely fails in that for me. It doesn't work to me for that, because you're using the same actor in multiple places and blah, blah, blah. So I don't know. I'm kind of, it's this weird, I'm also kind of running out of things to say about it, because it's like at a certain point, it really is what it is. Again, I don't know how popular or not, or how this movie is being marketed, because again, we're kind of out of the loop on that at the moment, and we're not in theaters to see trailers, so I didn't see a trailer for it. So I'm kind of just shrugging, like, I feel like the people who will want this movie will find it more or less. And it is definitely, and there's a part of me, I don't like the word pretentious. I think this is my final thought on this. I don't like the word pretentious or high art or low art or any of that bullshit. I just think that's all stupid. Maybe not stupid. I just don't like it as a way of categorizing and quantifying things. And anything can be pretentious or lowbrow or whatever. I don't care. If it's good, it's good. If it's not, it's not. There's other ways of qualifying and sort of figuring out how we feel about things based on technique and story and whatever. However, I don't really know how to look at this movie without being like, it's a bit heady, like, which might be the same thing as calling it pretentious, but there's an aspect to it where, because I didn't feel the characters as much, it felt like it was all ideas. And that's kind of why I asked you, is this, are you giving,
I don't disagree.
I sometimes think you give movies like this more of a pass than you do like an action movie, because the ideas here are really interesting and there's a lot to them.
Tell me about the ideas in the action films, Theo.
There are ideas in action films.
Action films are more visceral.
They might be more visceral.
They're supposed to be.
Right. Like, and you're like more willing to give these movies a pass than like an action movie, because there's more ideas here. In an action movie is usually like 1 or 2 ideas with maybe little nuances, or whatever.
Diversity is important, not because you'll get more unbiased people, but because everyone has different biases.
Right. And so I'm curious, I think about like, and this isn't, again, for the people at home, I'm not attacking my sister. This is things we talk about.
We're fine.
We're fine. I wonder if you and me too, but specifically, we give this a pass because the dialogue is so well written and because the situation is so well thought out and done, even though I still think the characters, you get more character in the second part than you do in the first part. Anyways.
I don't disagree with you. And when you're talking about giving it a pass, you still liked it. You still think
Oh
it's a
yeah.
good movie. You just think that I'm giving it more, and I might be, and that's fine. Other movies
Yeah,
get
I
passes
mean,
for less good. Lots of movies have gotten passes for bad reasons. So,
totally.
so my last two things are it's Symbiocytotoxoplasm, directed by William Greaves, and yeah, it's got 3 different crews because there's something about having 3 that kind
Right.
of matters, and it was interesting. But my last statement, which I know you agree with, is that I thought that its depiction of filmmaking, small filmmaking, was pretty good
Oh,
because
right.
so often you see writers, directors, actors, producers sometimes, but this is like, you get to see the these AD and I don't even know all the terms necessarily because I haven't been
The
on a ton of
gaff or the
sets, but
grip.
there's like, but we grew up, our mom worked on live television, and often enough, you and I were like downstairs with like the guys, the camera guys, the people that don't get glamorized by Hollywood.
Right.
And so it
Right.
was fun to see kind of those people who don't, and they do sometimes, you do see
Yeah.
them, but I always like it when you see the boom operator, the person getting room tone, these unsung heroes of filmmaking.
Long ago, you made me watch, I think, Lost in Oblivion is the title,
Right.
which is about a crew making an independent movie. It stars Steve Buscemi and some other people who I don't remember who might be
Yeah.
well known or not. And it really, there's a similarity between that and this, just in kind of how because in that
Yeah.
you see like the room tone guy. That's a little bit more about like pretentious people like right out of college or something doing a film or something.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a moment in that where somebody has food poisoning and is vomiting in a toilet. And in this, I think it's the AD maybe.
She seemed like she was the AD.
Yeah, probably the AD who's like
Maybe the
eating some.
production manager, hard to know. Yeah.
Yeah, she's eating some tilapia or something,
And
right?
she's having explosive diarrhea.
And it's just hilarious. So definitely, I also appreciated that aspect to it. And I forgot, we didn't even really talk about it a lot, but this is a movie that's really interested in the creative process. And I kind of mentioned it, but it's really interested in the creative process for a woman.
Yeah.
Like
You
a lot of
mentioned
it.
that.
Yeah, we didn't go into the details of like how it explores that necessarily, but it does it from 2 different angles. And I actually like that it's almost like in both it's exploring it, and in both it's kind of doing the negative version of how we look down on the women who are traditional before not being going out, and like, but then the people who go out who are like jealous of the people or going out and doing more traditionally male like
Housewives
things.
versus career women is what you're
Right.
talking about.
That's more or less how you boil it down, and like the negative parts of both and how one wishes they were like
Right.
the other or something.
Well, and the second half is all about her being manipulated by her husband in order to get the best performance, which is certainly something like we've heard Kubrick did that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. Otto Preminger famously did that to Sheen Seaborg. So
Lots of people did that. Yeah. It's so common that like, I tend to think that that's all blowhard bullshit. Like I get that we get some great movies from it, but the way that we manipulate people, it seems like people have been manipulated, is really toxic and bad for their health.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, like, and you have a woman who's the one being manipulated this way, and like she's creative and out there doing the thing, but like she's also has this home life that she wants. And so that's interesting. I wanted to make sure there's details there. We're not just saying, we're saying these ideas are interesting without talking about the ideas. It's because it's kind of heady and hard to discuss.
Yeah.
But
well, my last thing is, as a creative person trying to write a story, I appreciated that, like, oh, what if I change that, and then that becomes a little different. Like I've talked about it here, there's 7, 5, 2, 3 stories that exist in the world, but there's an infinite number of variations, and that kind of should, and I really struggle with what one to tell sometimes in my own writing. I really appreciated seeing that kind of shown on camera, and that's probably part of why I liked it so much.
Makes sense to me.
I think that's it. I feel like I had one other thing to say and now I have forgotten it, so can't have been that good.
Yeah, it's all good. We talked about it a lot. I think I talked about more than I thought I would.